Welcome to the Midnight Archive. Some stories are never gone. They are only waiting to be opened. There is an old hotel on the edge of the northern coast. It stands above the sea, where the cliffs are black, the wind is cold, and the rain seems to arrive before the clouds do. The hotel is called the Marlowe House. Most people come here for silence, but some rooms are quiet for a reason. Inside, the hotel feels older than it looks from the sea. The corridors are narrow, the lamps burn low, and the sound of the rain follows you from window to window. At night, the third floor is almost always empty. And at the far end of that corridor, there is room 317. The first thing people notice about room 317 is how ordinary it looks. A wooden door, a brass number, a thin line of warm light underneath. Nothing moves, nothing whispers. But every guest who sleeps inside that room leaves the hotel the next morning and never books it again. The key to room 317 is heavier than the others. The metal is old, the edges are worn, and every night, before midnight, it returns to the front desk, even when no one remembers bringing it back. There is a guest book in the lobby. Most of its pages are ordinary. Names, dates, room numbers, but room 317 has its own section. A section filled with short notes from people who stayed there once and never came back again. The staff learned not to ask questions. Sometimes, before a guest even entered room 317, something would already be waiting. A note, a box, a name written by hand. No one ever saw who left them there, but the message was always the same. Room 317 was ready. The first recorded guest was a woman named Eleanor Price. She stayed in room 317 for one night during a storm. When she awoke the next morning, there was something waiting for her on the bedside table. A small hair clip, pink, old-fashioned. She recognized it at once. It had belonged to her daughter. Eleanor had lost the clip many years earlier. On the day of her daughter's funeral, it simply disappeared. She searched for it for weeks. Drawers, coat pockets, old boxes. And now, in room 317, it had returned. Beside it was a small note. You left this behind. The next morning, Eleanor came downstairs before sunrise. She was pale. Her hands were shaking. At the front desk, she opened her palm and showed the receptionist the little pink clip. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "It belonged to my daughter." Eleanor checked out before breakfast. She did not ask for a refund. She did not leave a complaint. She only placed the key on the desk and walked out into the rain. Later that morning, the receptionist found an envelope beside the bell. There was no name on it, only 2 words, room 317. The second story came many years later. A man named Robert Harley arrived after midnight, soaked from the rain and angry about the last train he had missed. He asked for the cheapest room available. The night porter checked the register. Only one room was left, room 317. Robert Harley did not believe in hotel stories. He only wanted a dry room, a locked door, and a few hours of sleep. But sometime after 3 in the morning, he woke up. The desk lamp was on. He was sure he had turned it off. and on the writing desk, waiting for him, was an old envelope, yellow with age, and addressed in his own handwriting. Robert knew that envelope. He'd written it more than 30 years earlier, a letter to his younger brother, an apology he never had the courage to send. For years, he told himself it no longer mattered. But now the letter was open on the desk, as if room 317 had been waiting for him to read it. At 3:40 in the morning, the night porter heard footsteps in the corridor, slow, uneven. When he looked up from the front desk, Robert Hole was standing at the top of the stairs. He was barefoot, his shirt was untucked, and in his hand he held the letter like something that might disappear if he let go. The night porter asked him what was wrong. Robert placed the letter on the desk. His voice was low. "I wrote this when I was 23, he said. "I never sent it." The porter looked at the envelope. The paper was old. The ink had faded, but Robert's hands were shaking as if the letter had only been written that night. By sunrise, Robert Howell had left the Marlowe house. He did not sleep again that night. 3 days later, the hotel received a phone call from his wife. She said Robert had taken a train south to the town where his brother was buried. He stood at the grave for nearly an hour, and for the first time in 31 years, he finally said the words he had never written. After that, Robert Hale never returned to the Marlowe house. But room 317 remained. The bed was made, the curtains were closed, the desk was clean, no letter, no envelope, no sign that anything had happened there at all. Only the key, waiting quietly at the front desk. The third story came much later. An elderly man named Thomas Greaves booked room 317 by mistake. He had asked for a room on the ground floor, but the hotel was full that night, so the porter handed him the key to the only room left. Thomas looked at the number and sighed. Room 317. Thomas did not like the room. He complained about the stairs. He complained about the rain. He complained about the bed before he even sat on it. But when he opened his suitcase, he stopped. On the white sheet beside the pillow lay an old pocket watch, silver, cracked across the glass, still ticking. Thomas picked up the watch with both hands. He recognized it instantly. It had belonged to his father. The crack across the glass was the same. The worn silver edge was the same. And on the back, engraved in tiny letters, were the initials he had not seen since childhood. For a moment, Thomas forgot the room. He was no longer an old man in a hotel. He was a boy again. Then Thomas opened the back of the watch. Inside, behind the old metal cover, there was a tiny photograph. A boy in a Sunday coat, standing beside a man who looked too tired to smile. Thomas stared at it for a long time. The boy was him, and the man was his father. All those years, he had believed the watch was sold, but it had been kept, hidden, waiting. Thomas checked out before breakfast. He did not complain about the stairs. He did not complain about the rain. He only stopped at the guest book. His hand moved slowly across the page. 1 sentence, 3 words. I was wrong. After Thomas Greaves, the staff stopped writing explanations in the register. They simply cleaned the room, changed the sheets, closed the window, placed the key back at the front desk, and waited, because room 317 did not call for every guest, only for the ones who had left something behind. But the final entry in the file was different. It happened many years later, in October. A young writer named Daniel Mercer came to the Marlowe house to finish a book. He was tired, quiet, and carrying only one suitcase. He asked for a room with a sea view. The porter checked the register and handed him the key to room 317. Daniel Mercer did not know the stories. No one at the hotel had warned him. That night, he sat at the writing desk in room 317 and opened his notebook. Rain tapped against the window. The lamp flickered once, then again. Daniel looked up from the empty page. The room had gone cold. At 11:58 p.m., the lamp flickered one last time. Then something moved, not inside the room, under the door. A thin piece of paper slid slowly across the carpet. Daniel stood up. For a few seconds, he only stared at it. It was a photograph, old, black and white, and bent at one corner. Daniel picked up the photograph. At first, he thought it showed an old guest, a man standing by the window. The same curtains, the same writing desk, the same mirror on the wall. It was room 317. But then Daniel looked closer, and the air left his lungs. The man in the photograph was standing by the window. His back was turned, his shoulders were narrow, his hair was grey. Daniel told himself it was only a coincidence, an old guest, a stranger, someone who had once stayed in the same room. But then he noticed the scar on the man's left hand, the same scar Daniel had carried since childhood. Daniel turned the photograph over. On the back, someone had written a date, October 17th, 2046. 30 years in the future. The handwriting was careful, almost familiar. Daniel read the date once, then again, and for the first time that night. He truly wanted to leave room 317. Daniel did not sleep. The rain continued until dawn. At sunrise, the manager knocked on the door of room 317. There was no answer. He unlocked it with the spare key. The bed had not been touched. The suitcase was still beside the desk. The window was open, but Daniel Mercer was gone. The police searched the cliffs. They checked the roads. They called the station. No one had seen Daniel leave. Nothing was missing from the room except the photograph. But later that morning, the manager opened the guest book, and beneath Daniel Mercer's name, there was a new line, 2 words, he remembered. After Daniel Mercer disappeared, room 317 was removed from the booking system. Guests were told the top floor was under renovation. Staff were told not to discuss it. The door remained locked, the curtains remained closed, and the key was placed in a drawer behind the front desk, where no guest was supposed to find it again. Beside the key was a note, small, folded once, written in pencil. The night porter stood there for a long time before he touched it. When he finally opened the paper, the message was familiar. 4 words. You left this behind. The Midnight Archive. File number 001 closed, but not forgotten. This file is now closed, but the archive is never empty. Subscribe for the next Midnight File.